Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I would ask that everyone please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to welcome you all to the annual meeting this evening and introduce the people who are sitting on the stage. To my left is Carrie Kaler, Ron Boehm, Lynn Zettner, Jeff Peterson, board members, Jay Talusty, our parliamentarian, Frank Harrington, superintendent, Pat Arndt, our financial director, Tom Muller, Brenda Mamer, Kurt Eckes, Louise Schutz, board members, and Sue Beyer, our recorder. Also in the audience this evening we have past board members, past president and clerk Joe Fink and Martha Santo. Way in the back. This morning I had the opportunity to give a short address to the new teachers coming back to start the school year, and it was really fun to see all the excitement as they came into the auditorium and got ready to begin the new school year. I'd like to reiterate just a few of those comments again and maybe broaden that focus a little bit. Education is not about paper clips, rubber bands, reading tests, or multiplication tables. Education, as with most service-oriented businesses, is about heart. The hearts of teachers, administrators, support staff, and custodians are what make public education work. Public education works in Merrill because we have great teachers, great staff, great custodians, and great administrators who have the heart to make it work. Our job, all of us, is to protect, nurture, and teach the students. And to do that, we all need to work together. I'm very proud to be part of the Merrill Area Public Schools. I'll go into the meeting agenda at this time, and I would like to introduce Jay Talusty, our parliamentarian.
Thank you, and good evening. The powers of the annual meeting are limited by state statutes, so there are only certain things that can be accomplished this evening. Notice of the annual meeting and the budget hearing were published twice in the Tomahawk Leader, twice in the Merrill Photo News, and twice in the Merrill Courier. The budget summary was also published in the Tomahawk Leader, Merrill Photo News, and Merrill Courier. There will be a budget hearing in a few moments. During that hearing, there will be no motions. The annual meeting is not a school board meeting. It's a meeting of the common district that we're part of. To some degree, the results of this meeting are advisory, as the Attorney General has held that the school board has the ultimate authority to set the tax levy for operation and maintenance of the schools on or before November 1st. Eligibility of voting is set forth on page 3 of the budget report. Very briefly, you must be a U.S. citizen, you must be 18 years of age or older before today, and you must have been a resident of the Merrill School District for 10 days prior to today. There are methods to challenge a person's attempt to vote, and if we need be, we could go into that at the appropriate time. We're proceeding under Robert's Rules of Order. Typically, the procedure for voting has been by a voice vote during our annual meetings. However, rising, showing of hands, or an actual ballot is also acceptable if that's determined for a particular subject matter. On any motions and second, we'd ask that you please state your name for the record. The first item of business is the election of a chairman of this meeting. Typically, the chairman has been the president of the school board. However, anyone eligible to vote at this meeting can be the chairman. I'll make 3 calls for nominations. I'm simply asking for nominations, and a second to that nomination is not necessary. So I'll make the first call for a nomination for chairman of this meeting. Mr. Hedfeld?
Jay, before you do that, can I ask you some questions that deal with parliamentary procedure for the meeting, or is that, can I do that now, or do I do that later? Or?
I guess I'd rather just have us elect the chairman first, okay? Okay. Do you have a nomination? Way in the back. Okay, that's a nomination for chairman is Pat Berg. Is there another nomination for chairman of the meeting? Third and last call for a chairman of the meeting? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close the nominations and have the clerk declare a unanimous ballot for Pat Berg as chairman. Is there such a motion? Mark? Is there a second to that motion? Second to that motion. All in favor of that motion to close nominations and have the clerk declare a unanimous ballot for Pat Berg as chairman, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same sign. Motion is carried. Pat Berg, I'll turn the meeting over to you, and if there's questions, we'll...
Ron?
Just for the record, for Sue's purpose of recording, maybe you want the names recorded that made the motion.
We do. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ron. And just to reiterate it, it's really hard to see past about the 5th chair level here with the lights. So if you would state your name when you make a motion, that would be really, really helpful. And there's 2 mics in the front. If you care to come up and use the mics, you're certainly able to do that. Jeff, did you want to ask your questions now so we can clear that up for you?
Yes, thank you. Jeff Hetfeld, 1402 Monroe Street, Merrill, Wisconsin. I just have some procedural questions on how we can make motions or not make motions, or what we can vote on and what we can't vote on this evening. Now, is this on?
Flip the switch.
Are we okay now?
Yes, thank you.
Jay, you said that during the budget hearing we can't make any motions from the floor, so I'm assuming there's other times in the meeting where we can make motions. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And my understanding is that there are some things that we can't change through motion, though. For example, the tax levy resolution, or those things, am I wrong? Or can, when we look at those resolutions, can somebody move to change what those resolutions say or not?
Sure they can. These are just proposed resolutions.
Oh, okay. I understand that. My next question is this is an advisory vote, so we can either support resolutions or not support them, but the district will still have to set the budget by October. So is this advisory vote on all the resolutions or just the ones that pertain to the budget in setting the levy?
My understanding on that is it pertains only to the setting of the tax levy or the financial type matters.
All right, so then resolutions that don't pertain to setting the tax levy or financial matters, that vote then will be adhered to by the board once that's taken. Am I correct then?
I think that's correct, but I think every resolution has some financial impact.
I'm not arguing that. I'm just asking the question. Yeah. It'll be fine. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. We would proceed with the agenda then. The next item on the agenda is the minutes of the last annual meeting. Those minutes are included in the budget packet if you wish to refer to them on pages 5, 6, and 7. And at this time, we are looking for a motion to receive those minutes. Do I have such a motion? Jeff?
Yes, Pat, I make a motion to receive the minutes from the annual meeting on last week.
Do I have a second to that motion? Thank you, Paul. I have a motion by Jeff Peterson, second by Paul Klippel, to receive the minutes of the annual meeting. Is there any discussion, corrections, or additions? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving or approval of receiving the minutes signify by stating aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Anyone abstaining? Okay. Minutes are received. The next item on the agenda is the Treasurer's Report, trial balance, July 1st, 2002. Tom? Do you want to present that, Pat?
Our beginning cash balance for cash and investments on July 1 in our checking account was $7,508,160.95. During the year, we had receipts of $45,741,586.84, disbursements of $43,438,779.51, leaving us a balance at the end of June 2002 of $9,810,968.28.
Thank you, Pat. At this time, I would look for a motion to adjourn the annual meeting to move into our budget hearing discussion. Do I have a motion to adjourn the annual meeting to have a budget hearing? Yes.
Move to adjourn the annual meeting to have a budget hearing.
Thank you, Jeff. Do I have a second to that? Thank you, Mike. It was a motion by Jeff Hetfeld, second by Mike Van Lieshout, to move into the budget hearing. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of moving into the budget hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay. Any abstaining? Okay, thank you. At this time, I will turn the meeting over to Pat Arndt, who will give us a review of the 2002-2003 budget.
What I'm going to review tonight is a preliminary budget. There are a number of factors that occur between now and the time the final budget is set in October and the final levy is set by November 1st. A comment on the treasurer's report, $9 million. Wow, that's a lot of money. But we have to put it into perspective. I'd like to tell you a few things about it. On June 17th, we received over $6 million in equalized aid. Our final payment for last year's equalized aid was not received until July, and that was about $300,000. Those monies were given to us by the state in the form of equalized aid to support last year's program. Since the end of June, since this bank statement was generated, we have paid out over $2,750,000 in salaries and benefits, over $3,800,000 in other expenditures. Payroll this week alone will be over $600,000. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. My bank balance is now under $3 million. Wow, that's still a lot of money, but it has to last us for a while. I'm trying, I hope, through this book to put our budget into perspective, to give you a more clear picture of where we are and where we're going and what we're trying to do with our budget. If you could turn to page 19 in the budget booklet. This page is a pie chart showing where we get our money from. If we're going to spend the kind of money we spend to educate our students, we need to have a lot of money coming in. You'll see on this page, only 24% of our budget comes from local property taxes. For the general fund, this amounts to about $6,382,000. We have state equalization and computer aid that amounts to about 68% of our budget this year. That's over $18 million, almost $18.5 million. The rest of our revenues are grouped together in a grouping called deductible receipts, and these amount to about 8% of our budget, a little over $2 million. On page 18, the other side of that graph, we have a breakdown of where a lot of these revenues come from. This format is a little different than what you saw last year and in previous years. We've tried to respond to your comments and your questions and your concerns about making this budget easier to understand, making it easier to decipher where things come from and where things are going to. So you can see here we've divided our revenues up into local revenues. These include the property taxes, the rentals, the student fees, those kinds of things. Then we have intermediate sources. These are generally interdistrict kind of things. We have state sources. Here we find the big chunk from the equalization aid, our transportation aid, the library aid. SAGE is a program most of you are familiar with. It reduces our classroom sizes in the early elementary grades. This year, this is the only big increase in expenditure in revenues, and it basically comes from the fact that we are increasing and expanding this program. It will be expanded to include third grade this year. We've had kindergarten, first and second grades in the past years. So we will be adding some teachers, and consequently we'll need more funding from the state. This is fully funded by the state though. Following that, we have the federal sources of our revenues. These are our title programs. We have class size reduction programs. Carl Perkins, the vocational training programs are included in there. We will be getting more grants finalized through this next several months, so there will be changes in this. Some of our grant funding we don't know until we do get into the school year. At this point, we're projecting an increase of 1.98% in our general fund revenues. That's an increase of about $500,000. If you would turn then to page 22, you'll see a similar chart for the general fund expenditures. Here I've broken out the expenditures to show you that of our general fund, almost half of it, 49% of it, goes to salaries alone. Another 23% goes to benefits. Together that's over 70% of our entire general fund budget. When we pay salaries and benefits, when we increase salaries and benefits, this makes a tremendous jump in our budget. Purchase services include utilities, busing, maintenance and operations, travel. Some services that we hire, we don't hire and have on our payroll, for example, physical and occupational therapists. These people are hired through CISA or other, perhaps from I think ours are hired through Good Samaritan Hospital, and we pay Good Samaritan then for their services. Going back to pages 20 and 21, again, I've tried to simplify this a little bit, clarify it maybe for your information. People have asked me, well, what does this school cost and what does that school cost? We are on these two pages. The first page and a half shows what we call the objects 300 and up, the non-salary and benefit expenses. We have the expenses broken down for the elementary schools, the middle school, the high school, some additional school-related expenses. Then we have some title monies, our grant monies, broken down that following that. On the top of page 21, we go into some of the administrative expenses, the maintenance and operations budgets. And then we get to the big part of the budget, although it takes the smallest part of the page, the salaries and the benefits. We have an increase in our budget of 1.92% in salaries and benefits at this point in time. I would like to say we do not have settled contracts. We did not have settled contracts last year for either the teachers union or the MESPA, the support staff union. Both of these groups are included in this budget. Both of these groups are unsettled from last year. There are a couple things that means. It means our fund balance will increase this year. I don't have final totals on that yet. We're still completing our audit from this past year. But our fund balance will increase because monies were budgeted to pay for an increase in salaries and benefits for teachers and for the MESPA. Because these salaries, these contracts were not settled and the salaries will be paid at a later time when the settlements are agreed upon, we lose money in two different ways. We actually do lose revenue. The district is penalized by the state for not paying retirement at the time that the salaries supposedly were earned. So our contribution to the retirement system goes up for those salaries. We also, if the salaries and the packages are not settled by October 1st, will lose any aid for this year based on expenditures from the prior year. What this means is that a year from now, if we pay these salaries and benefits out of this year's budget, we will receive aid on those expenditures, but for this coming year, we will not receive aid on any salaries or benefits that would have been paid last year. You will see in here that there are some substantial increases in salaries, not in salaries. We have an increase in salaries in the MP3 students, and that comes as a direct result of the fact that we will be getting additional revenues from the city for the MP3 tapings. Under the benefits, there are increases in the retirement. We've been notified by the state that we will have a 0.5% increase starting January 1. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it adds up when you consider the volume of salaries that we pay retirement benefits for. We're also going to have, or are having currently, approximately 20% increase in health benefits premiums, and another probably about 15%, 10% increase in the dental premiums. It shows a higher increase in the dental insurance because we really didn't have as much built into the budget last year as we might have had, and more people take it, the more people that switch from single to family, those things all make a difference in there. The big thing I know that a lot of you are interested in, we had a lot of budget cuts last year. We have a short explanation on page 23 that shows some of the areas where there were cuts. There were layoffs. We were fortunate the state did not have to make as drastic a cut in our benefits, in our aids as we had anticipated. This is a one-time thing, I'm told, that the state will be making cuts next year and we will be heading for trouble, I'm sure. Because those cuts, those anticipated cuts did not happen, we have been able to reduce some salary in our budget for this next year because we did eliminate some positions. We laid off people. We were able to call back all but one. That was a good thing. It's a good thing for our district. We've also been able to make further reductions in salaries by attrition. We have people that retired or otherwise left the district, and those are being replaced by teachers who make lower salaries. We were able to add back most of the stuff that was cut for this year. The GT budget, a lot of the fluff, it's not fluff, but the things that make it better for the kids in the classrooms and better for the teachers. Equipment services, some of our just our maintenance and our operations were able to be added back in. And it's the 1 year add back. We probably won't be able to do that next year. If you would go to page 26 and page 27, these two pages show you what we're projecting for a tax levy. We're projecting a decrease in our mill rate of 4.02%. Our total tax levy is projected to decrease by 0.17%. A good portion of that difference is being made up by an increase in equalization aid. What does that mean to you? It means if you have a $100,000 home and we would expect that your taxes will go down about $42. That may be offset by an increase in the equalized valuation. Those dollars we don't know until October. And at that point, that's when we can finally set a final budget. I think that's about all I'm going to bore you with right now. Again, we're trying to make this book a little more clear, a little easier to understand. I know there are still things that have not been addressed in it, and I look forward to hearing your comments and your questions about it. Jeff.
Well, I'm here to make it a little more exciting.
Okay.
Am I going to be allowed one question to take turns, or can I ask a couple in a row? Or
Depends on how hard they are.
I don't think it'll be long.
Couple is
This is good.
Okay.
On page 21, detailed expenditure budget report, I have just a couple of questions. And first I want to start with a clarification because I want to make sure that I understand what I'm going to ask you. But as I go through the columns, that first column is the proposed budget for the coming school year, correct?
Right. That's right.
And the second column was last year's proposed budget, correct?
Last year's budget.
Okay, last year's budget.
Mm-hmm.
And the third column was what was actually spent
Right.
last year. Okay, so what I'm interested in, and I think most of us here tonight are probably interested in really comparing what was actually spent by the district last year to what they plan to spend next year.
Okay.
Okay, so if I understand that correctly, if we go down to the general fund, last year the school district actually spent a total of $25,714,945, correct?
Right.
And you're proposing to spend $26,955,910 this year.
Right.
So the budget that you're proposing over what you actually spend is really about a 4.8% increase. If you compare the percent increase from your actual to your proposed budget, it's about 4.8%.
Okay.
Okay? So that would be correct in saying that.
Yes.
I'm okay with that. All right. And I think that's what people really want to see is, what did you spend last year, what are you proposing to spend next year, and what the increase or decrease may be. To me, that makes more sense, and that's more realistic of maybe where we're going than comparing budgets. And that's just my opinion, but I think we have a lot of people that might agree with me. Next question. And again, as you know, I'm always interested in the teachers' salaries as well as I think the public is too. I think that's the big thing that people think about when they look at school budgets. So when I look at that, last year, according to the budget book, you spent $9,134,000 million on teacher salaries, and you're proposing $9,211,000 and some dollars for next year. So that's really an increase in teacher salaries compared to what you spent. You're proposing an increase in that budget compared to what you actually spent instead of a decrease.
That's right.
Correct. Okay. Next question. I know last year from the information that we got that the actual expenditures for salaries was $10,900,000, and I haven't been able to find in the budget book where the rest of that money is. And I'm assuming it's Fund 27, Fund 29 someplace.
That's correct.
Okay. But that's there. That's,
Okay.
I think I'm finished. Thank you.
Mark Seaman, 1304 Lark Street. I've learned through reading the newspaper and watching the news on TV that our state legislature funded for this current fiscal year the school choice program in Milwaukee.
That's right.
So that money doesn't necessarily have to come out of or come from other school districts. Is that correct?
It still will be coming out of the Milwaukee Charter Program is actually what will be reducing our aid from the state. The latest numbers that I got from them was that we would lose about $111,000.
So we will still be making a payment
Yes,
to that program?
yes, to the Charter Program.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Tom Andreska. I have, on page 16, if you could look at that, I have a question or clarification maybe, where you have financial highlights, the first paragraph, last sentence there. Financial highlights, the first paragraph, last sentence says, additionally, there were unanticipated savings in utilities and transportation expenses this year. When you have the word this year, are you talking this current school year, or are you talking about the past year?
This past year.
Past year, then, okay. Then if I look at page 21, when you go to page 21, where it has the utilities, last school year, 0102, budgeted $858,000 for utilities, and what actually was spent was $792 more. Transportation is the same way. You actually spent more than what you budgeted.
Okay.
That statement doesn't coincide with what the numbers say. So
Well,
where were the savings?
the savings, we used that money. If you remember, we had a referendum earlier this year to do some construction projects, and the referendum failed. Some of those construction projects still needed to be done. We had to make Washington School ADA compliant so we could provide access to the second story for our handicapped children and handicapped individuals. Some of that money was used to fund that project. Some of that money was used to take care of the boilers at the Prairie River Middle School. They're being replaced. It seemed like an excellent place to use the utility budgets because it will further reduce our utility expenditures in the coming years.
Okay, but when I look at utilities, that really isn't a fair, accurate number of what was spent on utilities then. Is that, I guess to me,
As
that's a
far
little
as-
confusing that, you know, if it was spent for doing this or this maintenance or that maintenance, it really
Okay.
didn't go for
They're
utilities.
maintenance projects that will
Are-
affect utility budgets. I guess that's about all I can
Okay.
tell you about that.
One other question. Page 18 then, and this is the revenues that were generated, and being that I'm involved with this a little bit, the fourth item down, the Merrill High School house sale, and I didn't realize Brian Astrike paid this much for it, $106,951 was generated by that house sale.
That's two
And I know that
houses.
wasn't anywhere near what he paid for that. And I'm just curious on that number.
This is an accounting thing, and it's because last year in 2001, the house that was built that year was not actually sold until July 2nd. So of 2001. As far as our accountants and our state budgets and our budgets are concerned, it's a revenue for this past year.
Pat, I guess I have a comment about Mr. Hedfeld's question before about the salaries. I think probably one of the things that impacts that is, again, the budget was anticipating an increase in the salaries if a contract had been settled. And since that was not the case, what was actually paid out would be less than what had been budgeted.
Can I respond to that? In the information that the district gave us last year in negotiations, we had the actual salaries that were paid to teachers last year, and it was $10,900,000, okay? And all I'm saying, Jeff, is that when you look at the budget, what we're really interested in looking at is what was actually spent and what you plan on spending, and that makes more sense to me. But if I understand what you're saying, is that because the contract hasn't been settled, the amount that was actually spent is less than what it would normally have been. Is that what you're saying? Because
Yeah, basically,
Okay.
we're anticipating spending, maybe it was 10 million or whatever the number is here. We expected that, as if the contract had been settled with the people that were there,
No,
so
that's
on and so forth, that we think we would have spent $9,600,000, but we didn't.
I understand, and if you want to give us a 4.8% raise, we'd appreciate that.
Sure, I'm sure you would.
Hi, I'm Kathy Ordeman. Can you hear it? Okay. Hi, I'm Kathy Ordeman, 109.5 North Nass Street. My question to you is on referring to page 23. You had mentioned that there, after all the layoffs and the callbacks, that there was only one position that we had lost. But if I'm looking on this page, according to what I see, there were 7 positions that were eliminated, and then if you look at step 2, there's 3 of them that were called back. And I'm just wondering how...
There's a difference. We eliminated some positions. There were eliminated positions, there were laid off positions. There was only one position that was laid off, that was one teacher that was laid off that was not called back.
Okay, so when
there
you're
are
saying,
more
okay, so there's a
positions
difference. So there were
eliminated.
positions, there was a loss to the students?
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Hi, my name is Pete McConnell. I live at 2418 Cotter Court, and I am not as intelligent with numbers as some people in this meeting are, so I'm just going to talk in layman's terms. There was a time last year when I came back from lunch. I'm a teacher at Merrill High School, and there was some conjecture or some concern at that point in time that my position as a teacher at Merrill High School and my wife's position as an elementary school teacher at Merrill area public schools at Washington, there was some concern as to whether those positions would be secure for the following year. I'm a 44-year-old male. I have 3 sons. I have a sophomore at Notre Dame, a freshman at St. Mary's, and a sophomore here at school. That's a lofty endeavor. And to find out over dinner that the discussion might be that mom and dad might be looking for a job next year was very disheartening. Mm-hmm. I have been in education for a long time. My question to you is, as I sat in my seat tonight, I heard once again the reverberations of language that I have become used to hearing in this district, and that is threats about the security of cuts and positions here at Merrill High School. It's difficult for me to hear that. I have friends that teach in this district that have chosen to teach somewhere else because those statements are unnerving. Some of those are young, gifted teachers. Some of those are middle-of-the-run career teachers. The question that I have for you when I hear those statements continuing to be made, I do appreciate your explanation to the $9 million surplus. I was one of those ears and eyes that was a little goo-goo about that figure. I'm not totally sure I understand you know, where the other 3 million's going and that. But I also heard you tell me that I'm going to get a savings in my taxes this year. That's cool. I like that. I know exactly where that money is going to go. But I don't understand that if that money that I'm paying in taxes is going to go down, why am I still hearing the fact that there's a threat for more cuts and a threat for more reductions? And I know that you're going to be able to answer that for me. I'm confused,
Okay.
and I need some clarification, please.
Mr. Harrington will speak to it if he can.
I'll take a shot at that one. First of all, we probably could have handled last year's layoff notice process more smoothly than we did, and I think we've commented on that a couple of times, and we learned some lessons from that. The reality of fiscal life in the state of Wisconsin is not real positive for any entity that receives major portions of its revenue from state sources for the coming year or two. I think everybody is aware that the state bailed itself out by using $800+ million of one-time tobacco settlement money, and according to the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, for the next biennium are looking at nearly a $3 billion deficit. And based on everything that I've heard, I don't think that there's a current good plan that will not have negative impacts for somebody to bail the state out of that particular circumstance. Unfortunately, I think there are two choices, or maybe a blend of the two, for the state. One is to raise taxes to get the $3 billion back over 2 years. And I've spoken with a few people downtown and around the state, and there's not a whole lot of support for raising taxes. And the other side is to cut expenditures, which is part of the process we went through this past year. To come up with $3 billion on a part of the state is a huge amount of money. And I'm recalling last winter and spring when the state kind of had three plans. They had the governor's plan, they had a reform plan, and they had an 11% across the board plan. The 11% across the board plan was an effort to kind of take care of all of the fiscal needs with one fell swoop. Think about our $18 million+ revenues from the state, 18,300,000, something like that. 11% of that, if we lost 11% of that, that would be over $2 million. And that would be on top of insurance premium increases, declining enrollment, and whatever else goes on. So I, like many of you, most of you, are talking with candidates for legislative seats, talking with governor candidates about other things that can be done to deal with the state budget as a whole. And I don't have a pat answer for it. I was talking with our auditor this afternoon and saying I feel like an absolute idiot because I can't come up with decent ideas to make recommendations for the state to deal with this big budget deficit. It will impact us, it'll impact municipalities, it'll impact all areas of operation that receive governmental funds. And so to answer your question about job security, I wish I could absolutely guarantee that that would be the case. I wish I could guarantee that we could give teachers 4 or 5 or 6% increases in salaries. You know, you're underpaid and underappreciated many times. But I think that the fiscal reality of the state is going to make that a difficult task to do. Anything else?
I have a response to that,
Okay.
yes. Again, I'm just a simple person, and I keep going back to this process. Part of this process, I'm trying to understand we're at a crossroads to make some decisions. One of the decisions that is being made by the people I'm standing in front of is to offer or entertain a budget that will give us a reduction in our mill rate. I'm assuming, again, from a simple man's standpoint, that that entertainment could be higher. So as a taxpayer, I could be standing here looking at you saying to me, Mr. McConnell, we would like to raise your taxes based on this mill rate. We see some things happening in the future that means we're going to need more money, and we would like for you to give us another $100 in December when it's time for you to pay your taxes. Now, I don't know if that makes sense. I think it makes sense to me.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Two parts in response to that. First of all, your personal property taxes hopefully would go down, but there's nobody that's going to be able to guarantee that, because your personal property tax is a factor not only of the school district, but of the municipalities that you live in, the technical college. There's about 4 or 5 things listed on your tax sheet.
Right.
And even though our mill rate has gone down every year, in reality, the property taxes you pay, that I pay, each year go up. That's a reality. In terms of the school district saying, we're going to raise the mill rate from $9.95 to $12.95 and generate $2 million worth of local tax levy, we can't do that under the current revenue cap legislation. The revenue cap legislation says we are going to be allowed X number of dollars, predominantly from the state and the balance from local tax levy. If we charge too much in local tax levy, we lose that in state aid.
So you're telling me you're charging me as much as you can by law?
By law, we're charging as much as we can.
And that shows a reduction in the mill rate?
And at this point, given the numbers that we're estimating in terms of property valuation increases, which we don't know, it would show a decrease in the mill rate. You're right.
Thank you.
I agree. You shake your head.
Hi, Mike Van Lieshout, W6615, The Clearing. My question is also related to the mill rate and the budget adjustment factors that are listed on page 25. I kind of would like just an explanation of what exactly those mean. And I also am wondering why there was an earlier explanation. I just would like a clarification of that. You said the mill rate was going down, but something else was going to eat up that savings on the property levy or something. So would you re-explain that one more time? I was confused on exactly what it said.
Go ahead.
The budget adjustment factors are simply, it's a page, and they're given to you to reduce some of the volume, the size of the numbers, to something that's maybe a little more comprehensible. When you talk about a levy of $9.4 million, that's a lot of money. If you talk about 1% of that, you're down to $94,000. That's a little bit more comprehensible to a lot of people as far as dealing with numbers, and that's basically what that page is about, just reducing the size of the numbers. As far as the mill rate is going down. It went down last year. Your taxes probably went up. The state tries to equalize the valuation on all of our properties, our personal properties. In our district last year, they went up about 8%.
So then does that generate for the school district 8% more in generalized aid from the state?
No.
If our valuation goes up 8%, does that increase the amount of money the state gives us?
The valuation, if the valuation goes up, that valuation is multiplied by this mill rate, and that's what gives you the increase in your taxes, if the valuation goes up enough. This budget was figured with an increase in valuation of about 4%. Statewide, I understand it was about 7%. I was told Lincoln County averaged about just under 4%. They won't give us the final numbers until the middle of October.
And the valuation is property within the boundaries of the school district.
That's right.
So if that goes up, it actually lowers our levy, but our taxes still go up.
Right.
Is that what you're telling me?
Mm-hmm.
That's very confusing. Thank you.
Darren Catlin, 1105 Cottage Street, Merrill. My question refers to on page 18. It shows the class size reduction program was increased by 58.54%. Also, I know the SAGE program deals with reducing class size, and that's an increase of 74.39%. which says to me that we all realize the importance of having smaller class sizes. I am the parent of an incoming 6th grade student, and I happen to have the enrollment figures here for Prairie River Middle School, and I see that every class, every homeroom on his team has a class size of 29 students. The average class size in the 6th grade at Prairie River Middle School is 28.8 students for homerooms. The average size in the 8th grade is 28.4. My question, I guess, then is, how are you going to realize the importance of reducing class size, and yet we're still talking about reducing staff, reducing teachers? We all know the importance of having smaller class sizes. A teacher myself, I understand that the quality of education that I can provide increases when my class size decreases. So what are you, as a school board, going to do for my 6th grade son next year, realizing that this year, in the past year, we lost 18 students, enrollment students, not turnover from classes. We lost 18 and we gained 48 new students to our enrollment at Prairie River Middle School. What happens if we gain 30 more students next year? Am I going to have a class size of 35? I can't safely put 35 kids in my room. I only have 30 desks. I want to know what you're going to do to address the overcrowding problem at Prairie River Middle School. Thank you.
I think that does create a real dilemma for us, and I need to segregate the SAGE program from the rest of the operation in terms of instructional class size in the district. Most of you are aware that the SAGE program is a state program for grades kindergarten through grade 3. As part of the legislative package last year, there was an effort made to modify the SAGE program to allow school districts to choose which grades, kindergarten through 3rd grade, would be serviced by this Class Size Reduction Act. However, that was not successful, and as a result of the state program, if we're going to have the SAGE program at all, we have to go kindergarten through grade 3. That's the way it is. The tough part of your question is, what are we going to do about other areas of the district, other levels where the class sizes, pardon me, are considerably larger? And there is no simple answer to that. You know, the simple answer is it's a matter of dollars, or it's a matter of us exchanging something that we feel is less important for an expenditure than providing classroom teachers with smaller class size. And we're reaching a point in our budget process where there aren't a whole lot of things to exchange for that. And it goes back to the big budget picture of declining revenues from the state and the rest of the package that goes with that. I wish I had a pat answer and a good one for you, but I don't. We'll have to look at what our enrollment really looks like when the kids come into school next week and see what kinds of modifications we'll be able to make.
John Crone, N851 Center Road. Just a couple of questions on understanding the numbers. As you get out in the community, a number of people aren't here, but they have picked up these brochures. Just curious, knowing the different school sizes, looking at the school budgets on page 20, I would like to know why Midway has such a large budget. Just curious as to, so again, if somebody asks a question, what is that about?
Okay, part of the problem, and this is a historical problem, is the fact that we have an elementary budget and it is divvied up amongst the various schools. The Midway budget includes the textbook account for the elementary schools. It's about $25,000, and that makes a great deal of difference in the size of their budget.
I guess why wouldn't you put textbooks separately so when people in the community look at this that don't come to this meeting won't think that we're doing something special out at Midway that we're not doing elsewhere?
I'll make a note of it for next year.
I think that would be a good thing. So, you know, thank you very much. That now I know what the difference there is. Second question is, again, to the balance. trying to understand, looking at the budget, we were under budget by $1 million some. Does that show up? I mean, you know, part of it you allude to, it sounds like a cash flow issue. What is the real, I mean, at any given time, cash flow is going to throw that number all over, but next year, are we going to be looking at 10 million, or are we going to be looking at 2 million when you come to the end of the year? I know it's hard to speculate, but...
At the end of the year, we'll have money simply because of the way the state portions out their aid. We don't get a big chunk. We get about 1/3 of the aid for the school year, the end of June. So it's always going to look like we have all kinds of money, and it's not reality. In September, we borrow approximately $6 million so that we can make payments to staff and pay our bills through December until we get the rest of the aid that comes in December. So it is a cash flow problem, it's a cash flow situation, and it's something that really distorts the look of the books at the end of the school year.
Okay. The other question is last winter we were all here, and a recommendation that I thought the board had accepted was to formulate a committee to evaluate budget cuts and identify so the community would know, you know, if we have to make budget cuts, here's the list. Has there been any action on that? I haven't heard anything.
Yes, there has, and I'll let Pat Berg talk to that point.
Thank you, John. Actually, I had hoped to get an ad hoc budget committee formed and going this summer. Unfortunately, due to some family medical problems, I had a summer where I wasn't available. And we have now got a group of people together, and we're going to look at having the first meeting of that committee on September 12th and get that group together to start looking at a process that will help us define the budget and look at the budget for the next, hopefully, a process that will help us evaluate and look at how we make the budget and how the numbers come out and how we can be fair and equitable to everyone so that all of the schools look at the same issues when they draw up their budgets. So thank you for bringing that up, and my apologies to the community for not getting that done sooner.
Thank you.
Mine relates to that. Christine Vorpagel, N2227 Oak Ridge. Is that where the Long Range Planning Committee, is that what he's referring to? Because I think that was another one, talked about either doing this budget ad hoc or look 5-10 years down the road. Is that in the process? Because I knew they were looking for members.
I think what will happen is we're going to look to that ad hoc budget committee when they have an opportunity to meet and form and start their ideas, that will be one of the things that they're going to suggest that we start creating and look at projecting out 3 or 4 or 5 years from now on. So that's not exactly in the works, but I think it's one of the issues that they'll be talking about.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
This question is for Pat. Pat, last year I asked you a question regarding debt retirement, and I asked if there was a certain amount that we had to retire each year, and you said that we did. I, for one, I would love to pay off my house early and make extra payments if possible. Does the district pay whatever the amount is each year? Is that amount like a maximum amount that we can pay, or is there a minimum amount that we can actually pay for debt retirement and take that extra money and use it for general operating expenses? Or is the amount that we're paying the set amount that we have to do?
When we budget through the revenue limits, it asks what our budget is for revenue or for debt retirement, and that is based on a preset series of payments and interest that are generated when we sell the bonds for our long-term debt. We have a long-term loan, a note, if you will, from the state trust fund, and we also have a very short-term one. That one will be finished, a small one. It'll be finished this year. The state trust fund, under some circumstances, allows you to prepay your debt if you have the monies available. For those of you that have seen our building out here for Head Start, the Head Start and Early Childhood building, that building will be financed through a state trust fund loan on a 10-year note. That's being done so that it will be paid by Head Start, paid for by Head Start. It will not be an increase in your taxes to pay for that. But it was also done through the state trust fund because they do allow us to prepay, and we will be prepaying that one. Most of the long-term debt is set on a particular payment schedule, and that's the one that we adhere to.
Thanks, Pat.
Okay.
Joe Mertens, N2767 East Shore Drive. My question is for Pat. To start out with, actually, you made a comment. Let me start out this way. I'm very proud to work for the Merrill schools. I've been here 16 years. Like myself and many of the teachers, as you know, we've gone through quite a bit of education to get to our positions, as many of you have as well. I have a very close friend of mine who is my age, 40 years old, happening naturally, looking at retirement.